And meanwhile, the White House is also standing its ground tonight on the other uproar swirling around President Trump today. An issue in that case, allegations that the president passed classified intelligence from another nation to the Russians. William Brangham begins our coverage.
What the president discussed with the foreign minister was wholly appropriate to that conversation and is consistent with the routine sharing of information.
National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster used that phrase, wholly appropriate, 9 times today as he pushed back against reports that President Trump made a damaging disclosure to Russian diplomats last week. The storm began Monday evening, first in the Washington Post and quickly followed by other major news organizations. All reported that President Trump told the Russian foreign minister and Russian ambassador about highly classified information given to the U.S. by an ally in the Middle East, but without that ally's permission. It pertained to an Islamic State plot based in Syria that involved laptops on airplanes. The New York Times reported today that Israel was the source of that information, though Israeli officials would not confirm it.
Mr. President, did you share classified intelligence information with the Russians?
The president himself ignored questions today as he met with Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the Oval Office. Later, though, he said this.
Well, we had a very, very successful meeting with the foreign minister of Russia. Our fight is against ISIS, as General McMaster said, and we want to get as many to help fight terrorism as possible.
That followed a series of tweets this morning saying, as president, I wanted to share with Russia, which I have the absolute right to do, facts pertaining to terrorism and airline flight safety. Last night, as the initial shockwaves over this alleged revelation spread throughout Washington, McMaster appeared outside the White House.
The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed. And the president did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known.
But none of the news accounts had alleged that the president revealed sources or methods or military operations. Today, McMaster was asked to respond directly to what the reports did say, that the president revealed highly classified intelligence to an American adversary, Russia. McMaster didn't deny that, but he did elaborate just a bit.
That the president wasn't even aware, of where this information came from. He wasn't briefed on the source or method of the information either.
In Moscow, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed the story.
It's complete nonsense, not a subject to be denied or confirmed.
But the episode raised fears about how U.S. allies might react. One European official told the Associated Press that his country may stop sharing intelligence with Washington. The revelations also rippled through Congress on the heels of the president's firing of FBI Director James Comey. Republican Senator and chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker, said the White House is in a downward spiral right now and have got to figure out a way to come to grips with all that's happening. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell complained of yet another distraction from what Republicans want to talk about.
I think it would be helpful to have less drama emanating from the White House.
As for Democrats, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer demanded the White House release the full record of the Oval Office meeting with the Russian diplomats.
Until the administration provides the unedited transcript, until the administration fully explains the facts of this case, the American people will rightly doubt if their president can handle our nation's most closely kept secrets.
With the White House in damage control mode, CIA Director Mike Pompeo went to the Capitol this evening to brief the House Intelligence Committee. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
For more on this story, we're joined by the NewsHour's Lisa Desjardins on Capitol Hill and Olivier Knox, Chief Washington Correspondent for Yahoo News. Olivier, let me start with you at the White House. We now have this report from the New York Times about the Comey memo. This is sort of the third crisis that the White House has trying to deal with in the past 2 weeks. How did they do today on the report about the intelligence being shared in the Oval Office with the Russians? How did they fare with that?
Well, I think you have to notice that their story's evolving a little bit. H.R. McMaster, the president's national security advisor, came out and said it's false. He, as your reporter pointed out, he denied things that were not actually in the original bombshell Washington Post report. Today they've pivoted, though, and now it's false and trying to draw our attention away from it. It's, well, maybe it happened, but it was entirely appropriate. And that's a notable shift in the rhetoric.
And Lisa, I understand you've got some reporting on this Comey report.
That's right. Senators were just finding out about this report as they were voting for a nomination. And I talked to Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr. He said he had been told about this by Senator John McCain. And when we went through the New York Times report with him, he told us, I believe that Director Comey might have told us if a request like that from the president had been made. And Burr said it was never mentioned. John, essentially the intelligence chairman is questioning the New York Times report, saying he thinks Comey would have brought that up. He also said that he believes the onus is on the New York Times to present this memo, not just have someone read from it. He went even farther, John, and said that he thinks there's a very legitimate question in his mind as to whether someone out there in the intelligence community or elsewhere is trying to undermine the president. That's one of the strongest reactions we've had in the president's favor on Capitol Hill today.
And beginning to question the intelligence community. Olivier, all this is happening as President Trump is about to leave on his first overseas trip. How do you think this is going to affect the trip?
Well, they were already pretty stressed out about this trip. It's his first foreign trip. It's big, it's high stakes, it's high profile. Riyadh and Israel and the Vatican and NATO and a group of rich countries. I don't know how much it's going to affect the trip, except that if there's a drip of revelations, which certainly the New York Times suggests, given that Comey documented every single interaction he had with the president, that's certainly a possibility. I think you have to just look at H.R. McMaster's briefing today, which was originally designed as a briefing about the trip. He read us roughly the schedule, but then was
if we have time,
with questions about the intelligence. And so it's going to be a pretty big distraction, I think, from what the president wants the agenda to be.
Lisa, very quickly, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell today said he wanted a little less drama, a little more focus on the agenda. Is this getting in the way?
It is a distraction. Republicans tell you that across the board. They are still hoping to get a health care plan out of the Senate as early as July, but more and more, John, people say that's optimistic. They're now talking about August, September for health care and tax reform.
Lisa Desjardins on Capitol Hill, Olivier Knox of Yahoo News at the White House. Thank you both.